Welcome to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. This is the show that tracks the workplace and the workforce trends, trying to find the ideas that will make you and me a little bit better at what it is that we do. And in so doing, we get to meet some pretty cool people along the way. This will be one of those days. If you're a fan of this show, you've heard my fascination with the city of New Orleans. It is an unhealthy fascination. The rules that apply in so many places don't seem to apply in New Orleans, and the businesses that function there seem to work a little bit differently. I've always loved New Orleans, since visiting as a child, going to Saints games with my parents and my siblings, and as I guess it was a teenager, walking up and down in Bourbon Street with my parents, looking in the bars and going, oh my Lord, did I just see what I think I saw? With my parents walking behind me, smiling, going, yep, he saw what he thought he saw. I've always loved the place. I then became a Tulane student and grew to really enjoy it in a different way. And now as an adult, I like to get back there a handful of times a year to see what's going on. Now, I know there are plenty of you out there that don't like New Orleans the same way that I do. In fact, it was a friend of mine one time that told me the favorite thing he likes about New Orleans is seeing it in his rearview mirror as he leaves. I don't like that guy anymore, and I realize his parents never really liked him either. But I don't share his same belief. I think it's fascinating, and I can't explain why. It's probably my favorite city in the world, and it's just some odd hours away. Love that place. Add to this a kind of a non sequitur, and that's this. With a radio show, you tend to get attention from people that normally wouldn't pay you any attention. When I call someone up and tell them I'd like to interview them on the radio, they take notice. They give me some attention. They give me some time. And there are plenty that don't, but there are plenty that do. And it's the one that do that make my day. If you're familiar with the history of the show, you'll know I've interviewed 3 musicians out of New Orleans who are just some of my favorite, who I'm pretty sure wouldn't have given me the time of day had I not been able to say I'd like to interview them on the radio. And I spent an hour with all of them and have since been in email correspondence with them. I'm not exactly their best friend, but nor am I a stranger either. It's pretty cool. Combine the radio show with my fascination with New Orleans and the fact that people take your call when you tell them that you've got a radio show, and let's add to this mix the galleries of Royal Street in New Orleans. Now, my wife and I, after I left Tulane and got married, she and I would come back and visit New Orleans from time to time and just to escape, get away. And one of my favorite things to do is walk the galleries of Royal Street and, when possible, meet the artists whose works are on display. These artists usually have a very different view of the world. I admire the way they see things. It's strange and different from me, and I like to talk to them and try to step into their eyes for a little bit and see the world the way they do. I enjoy it, and it's a wonderful afternoon for me walking up and down Royal Street and talking to the artists when they're there in those different galleries. One trip into New Orleans many years ago now, my wife and I were walking up and down the street, and we decided to step into one of the many antique galleries. And it was just lucky happenstance that the one we stepped into was M.S. Rao. And it was just lucky happenstance that one of the guys that we met in there was named Jim. And Jim was extraordinarily kind and nice and gave my wife and me attention and showed us around the gallery and pointed to some of the things in there that we were confident we'd never have seen anywhere else in the world. Don't think antique gallery when you think M.S. Rao. Think museum with stuff for sale, with stuff that ranges from a couple of $1,000s to $5 and $6 million. They allowed my wife to try on like a 6-carat sapphire ring, which she walked around with for a little while. And we engaged with the people, and Jim showed us around. Now, back to the radio show. My fascination with New Orleans, and now M.S. Rao is a part of New Orleans. I picked up the phone weeks ago and said, I'd like to interview Bill Rao, third-generation owner of M.S. Rao Galleries, for my radio show. And they said, oh, really? Well, for a radio show, we'll do what we can to make Bill available. When I got the approval, I got excited, and I said, team, we're going to New Orleans for this one. What you're about to hear is my conversation with Bill Rao, owner of MS Rao Galleries, third generation, as we did it in one of his conference room off the side of this extraordinary antique gallery. The trends shaping his business are remarkable. His customers are even more remarkable. The items in the store, and you're about to hear one of the best stories ever told on What's Working with Cam Marston as Bill talks about the piece of art that he wished he wouldn't have let go. When we get back, Bill Rao, third generation owner, MS Rao Galleries, one of my favorite conversations to date. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions.
Think about how people really see you. The kid at the drive-thru just sees a coffee drinker.
Please pull forward.
Your local barista sees the person who loves a smiley face in their latte.
See you next time.
It's kind of the same way with insurance. Other insurance companies just see a customer, but a State Farm agent sees more. They see you as a neighbor. Your State Farm agent is here to get to know who you really are, so they can help life go right.
Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, MOBIL at 666-1616.
Even if we don't meet in person, Regions is still here for you. We make it easier for you to stay informed and in control with online and mobile banking. You can check balances, transfer money, pay bills, deposit checks with Regions Mobile Deposit, and even set up helpful alerts no matter where you are. We're here to make it easier to bank your way. Learn more at regions.com/tools. Regions Bank, member FDIC.
That's the sound of rush hour. Hello, recess.
Mom!
Work from home is a lot of work. Even though we're a little further apart right now, we're still in this together. Regions is donating this ad to local food banks to shine a light on them as they feed our neighbors in need. Learn how you can help or get help at regions.com/foodbank. Regions Bank, member FDIC.
The best, most cost-efficient ways to talk to customers about who you are and what you do is through signs, simple, effective signs. Hi, I'm Cam Marston, host of What's Working. Signorama is the Mobile area's leader in helping you design and build signs advertising your business. What kinds? All kinds of signs, all kinds. Find Signorama on Facebook or at signorama-mobile.com. We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. I'm sitting here in front of Bill Rao. Bill's a third-generation owner of MS Rao Antiques in New Orleans on Royal Street. Probably one of the coolest and most interesting stores I go into on a regular basis. I've seen things in this store and heard things and stories in this store that I could never gather anywhere else. And I'm just excited for this conversation. Bill, thank you so much for your willingness to let us come over here, come into your store, and begin this interview.
Well, thank you for coming.
Tell me about the story of MS Rao.
What's the story of MS Rao? It's, in a sense, the beginning is a classic immigrant story. My grandfather came over to America with, I've heard, either $8 or $12 in his pocket. I've heard both, not that that's a big difference. Had an uncle in New Orleans, came to work for his uncle, saved $500, and in 1912, he'd worked for 4 years, put $250 in the bank in case the business failed, and started the business with $250. My grandfather, I never knew him in a business sense. He died when I was 5, but from everything I heard, he was as smart and as tough as one could ever be. You didn't really want to cross him, and he would outwork anybody.
What was the antiques business like in 1912? I'm trying to imagine the chapter in the nation's history and then maybe what his market may have been. He certainly didn't have the internet to sell things across the nation. It must have been entirely local in 1912.
Well, that's a great question. So first of all, from what I understand, in 1912, the antique business was a cross between old pieces, great objects, and used furniture. And used objects, I should say. probably by the end of World War I, it had basically morphed into where we would think of the antique businesses today. But in the beginning, it was sort of a combination. His clients were, what a lot of people don't realize is that up until the early 1960s, New Orleans was by far the largest city in the South. It was bigger than Houston. It was bigger than Dallas. It was bigger than Miami. It was bigger than Atlanta. It was bigger than Charlotte. It was certainly bigger than Orlando, which really didn't exist pre-Disney World. And New Orleans was the shopping center of the South. People came over here from Texas, really from Georgia, Florida, certainly from Mobile. This is where somebody came to shop, and so we were in the centerpiece. And my grandfather had I would not say the foresight, but the good luck to pack himself on Royal Street, because there were 3 or 4 shopping districts in New Orleans, of which they really don't exist today. What I mean by that is, there's no way that these places that also were equal to Royal Street, where we are now, you would go today to buy great objects. I mean, they've definitely gone downhill, and Royal Street's gone uphill. So he was fortuitous. I wouldn't say he was smart. I would think just lucky.
Yeah. So what is the gallery today? You've given us a sense of what things may have been like in 1912. Today it's completely different, yet still as prestigious as it was then. Describe it today.
Well, today it's a completely different world. I think my grandfather, if he came today, would be proud and aghast at the same time. The fact that we don't have things on top of things, and things, touching things, everything in its own space, I think would drive him crazy. Today, we're a different animal. There's so much more knowledge out there today, so much more expertise than there used to be, that if you don't have wonderful objects and great stories and great expertise behind them, you can't sell them today. And today we try to buy the very best of everything. My grandfather, I'm sure, would have been happy, and I'm positive would have been happy selling something good. We're not happy selling something good. We're only happy if we sell something great.
And define great.
That's a wonderful question. A 10 out of 10. But what does that mean? It doesn't always mean the same thing. Something stunningly beautiful, something the only one like it ever made, something with a phenomenal history. Now, if we can get all that together, that's the bee's knees, as they say in England.
Yeah, the bee's knees. So a couple of the things that I've seen in here over my years that just floored me, one of which I was telling John about earlier today, Napoleon's plans to invade England were printed up in a journal or something like that. And I walked in and thought, this should be in France. This is Napoleon's plan. He never executed those plans, obviously, but that's standing here in front of me. This was his. There's a cave bear downstairs. The bones of the cave bear. There was a jupe table that I desperately wanted. In fact, looked at exits in the building to figure out how I could roll this thing out. Just remarkable items in here. My question is, and I want to learn who your buyer is. I want to learn how your buyer has changed. But let's begin with, how do you acquire these items? Where do you find a cave bear, a map of Napoleon's plans to invade England, or a jupe table?
Well, one of the advantages of being in business for 108 years is a lot of pieces find us. And I know this sounds crazy. Probably if you take our 200 best objects in the gallery, first of all, probably 25% of them we've owned before.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah, sure. The advantage of being 108 years is that we outlive our clients.
So, do you tell the client to keep the barcode on it? Please don't remove that barcode. It's coming back at some point.
We often tell clients, when we did a deal with somebody the other day, I said, "I'll sell this to you, but you have to promise to give me first option to buy it back when you decide you're ready." So about 25% of the objects find us. We're constantly looking, and when you're known for having these wonderful objects, these things that stand out, that people remember your home for. You mentioned a jupe table, and it'd be very hard to describe what that is on a radio. But yeah. I can assure you, and you know this to be 100% true, that if we put this, how can I say this? If somebody had this house, people would remember it.
Yeah.
And people would remember their house for this table. And that's what we like to have. And so a lot of those pieces find us.
Yeah, I love the way you say that. It makes the house memorable. The pieces that you put in there make the house memorable so that the guests will always remember that type of thing. Give me a sense of...
I'll just touch on that. I know you're getting ready to ask another question, but I'll touch on that real fast. My father used to tell people, and it was so true, he would say, you can build this fantastic house with 12-inch walls and have all these engineering feats in there that are worthwhile and desirable, but they don't show. And if you don't fill your house with great objects, your house will look just normal to the average person coming by. You have to have things in your house that people can see that are memorable.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's fascinating. Give me a sense of just the bones of the business. What is your staff size, for example?
We have 61 employees.
Are you serious? They're not all under this roof then, are they?
All but three. We have an office in England, so the three are in England. Wow.
Do you have can you share what a gross revenue number would be?
It's, pre-COVID, it's north of $70 million a year.
Yeah. That's pretty good. Do you ever compare your revenue per square foot, like a retail store may, to, let's say, a Nordstrom's or anything like that?
We have in the past, and we sort of look at. I think a much better revenue gauge is revenue per employee.
Yeah,
and we do very well on that. On that respect.
Do your employees come in? Your salespeople come in with a list of contacts? Because I would imagine when something new comes into the store, they will say, that looks like somebody my previous customer or something my previous customer may like. So when you hire people, do they have a contact list that's admirable?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Very few come in with a great contact list because there's very few places like us that would have the great objects that we have. I'll share a story that I heard a long time ago that I read something about Westerns on TV, and they had an idea of when Westerns were popular of hiring a bunch of cowboys to be able to go out there and ride the horses and lasso the horses or cows or whatever they were lassoing. And they found out real quickly that it was easier to teach an actor how to lasso than a cowboy how to act. Mm-hmm. And we try to hire that high, great moral, smart, engaging salesperson and teach them the antiques more than the person that comes in with a lot of knowledge, but it's not necessarily a good fit for us.
A theme that we hear regularly: hire for attitude, train for skills. I'm sitting with Bill Rao. We're in his studio his gallery on Royal Street in New Orleans. You're listening to What's Working. We'll be back in 1 minute. What's Working is brought to you by Regions.
I'm Matt Armbruster with Ransom Ministries. We help people in our community that most others have given up on. Please donate your unwanted electronics to Ransom Recycling. We teach life skills, job readiness, and job creation through our electronic recycling program. We take anything with a cord. Find us at ransomministries.com, or you can call us at 251-751-0044.
Human Resource Departments spend countless hours on insurance billing mistakes, Obamacare rules, and compliance. Employee benefits serve the purpose of recruiting, retaining, and rewarding employees. We can handle all of your benefit needs with cost-effective products, employee enrollments, and handle your HR issues. Benefit admin doesn't have to be complicated. My name is Michael Cowart Jr. of the Cowart Group, and we specialize in helping businesses with their employee benefit packages. Visit CowartAssociates.com.
We're back. I'm with Bill Rao. Bill's the president, the third generation president of MS Rao. Bill, did you always want to know, or did you always know you wanted to go into this business? So many of my listeners are family-oriented businesses, and they struggle with transition plans and succession plans. Tell me about your succession into this position.
I started working here when I was 14. I was with two of my friends who were the rich kids. And what I mean by the rich kids, I don't mean that our parents had money or whatever. What I mean by that is that, I got paid $5 a day to come every day after high school and $10 on Saturdays to work. And I had two other friends that worked, and we were the kids that, if we wanted to go to a movie or wanted to buy clothes, we had our own money to do it. We didn't have to ask our parents for that. I had started working here very young, and it's something I always wanted to do. I never thought about when I was 14 or 15, is this what I want to do the rest of my life? But, I never thought of doing anything else. And it was interesting. I'm probably unique not unique, but unusual in a family business. I'm the youngest of my generation. My grandparents had two sons, both in the business, and they each had two kids. And I'm the youngest of the four. And usually one of the older ones gets it. I was sort of blessed that it sort of fell my way.
Yeah, no kidding. And are the other siblings, your brother and your two cousins, still in the business?
My sister and two cousins, none of them are in the business. They were all owners of the business over the past 10, 12, 14 years. My family's bought them out. Very friendly. We all get along great.
Yeah.
It was important to me that everybody stayed happy.
Third generation. Do you have a fourth generation lined up?
There's fourth generation in the business now. My daughter is 31 years old and working here. She's actually on a business trip today, and so she's not here. But we have generation 4 working.
That's fantastic. Is she your only child?
I have a second daughter, but she's not in the business.
Yeah. It's interesting that the family businesses, those successions and transitions in New Orleans is just as full of them as Mobile seems to be, can be very delicate. And it's commendable that you all have handled it as well as you did. Did you do something early on to ward off what could have been a potential succession problem?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, somebody once commented to me, when I was very young in the business, I was having trouble. I was complaining to a guy also in the family business, in the furniture business, that was older than me, and I was complaining, I guess, about my uncle about giving me grief on stuff, and he goes, "Well, let me tell you something. In the road in the family business, the road to the top is much shorter and it's much rockier."
Yeah.
One thing we did, which turned out to be really, really fortuitous, is there was an antique business down the street from us that imploded, Mannheim's. And it was a strong-willed father, a number of children and cousins that didn't really get along. When he passed away, the family imploded, and they spent, I remember years ago reading they spent over $2 million on attorneys. And I used that to implement a buy-sell that was across the board that my cousin certainly wasn't in favor of, but agreed to it. And it was one of the best things I ever did, because it just sort of it made it so it was clear what would happen if anybody ever wanted to get out, or anybody, so it was, we used somebody else's bad fortune for our good fortune.
Yeah. Learned from their poor execution on a model.
Their horrible execution on a model.
Yeah. Let's go into your customers. You are open to the street. If you walk down Royal Street, you now have a new front to the store. I want to talk about that. But if you walk down Royal Street, there's nothing to prevent anyone from coming into this store. From what I can tell, I've been welcomed in many times. But there's not a lot of stuff that you walk in here and say, yeah, I'll take one of those. And you put in your, I'll back the car up. We'll take it home tonight, honey. I mean, the materials in here, the items in here are significant acquisitions for most people, I would suspect. What is the value of foot traffic in a store like this?
Well, first of all, you had shared with me when we were offline before that Jim Cottrell used to help you. Jim was a salesperson that sadly passed away a number of years ago. When Jim came to us 20 years ago, he had previously worked for another high-end firm, and he had told me that his job at the other one was to sort of look at somebody up and down and say, act like, can you afford to be here? And he told me this his second day working here. I said, well, Jim, let me just give you a very fair warning. If you ever do that in our gallery, it'll be your last day working here.
So it's a different culture.
We want everybody to feel welcome. And we have, listen, we enjoy showing people around. We know 97 or 98% of the people coming in aren't our clients. But we also know that they're going to tell people about us. And all it takes is for them to tell somebody that is our client. Go back and tell a rich relative or a friend that's wealthy or a boss or whoever, or just to follow us on the social media that we do, and one day we never know who's gonna hit it wealthy and then come back and see us. We're here for the long term.
Tell me what your client, your customers, your regular, is there a typical customer, and what does he or she have in common?
There's not a typical customer by any stretch of the imagination. We have, if you sort of think of it as 3 groups of clients. One group is what I call the decorator. Somebody's buying a house and they want a whole bunch of nice things for their house, or 1 or 2 nice things for their house. They're not really a collector, and you may or may not keep them as a client after they've done their job. And they can be a great, wonderful run when they're here.
Are they spending someone else's money, these decorators, or are they spending their own money?
No. When I say decorator, I mean the person they're decorating their house. Sometimes they'll have a decorator, sometimes they won't. Then our best clients are collectors, people that like owning wonderful objects. And they're not looking for a painting that's 23 inches by 42 inches that fits that spot with blue in it. They're looking for something that gives them great pleasure, and they're collectors. And those people, my grandfather used to say that a shortage of funds will never stop the purchase of a desired object, no matter how expensive it is. They'll find a way. There was a gentleman who passed away recently named Frank Fasulo. Frank had the greatest collection of old Paris porcelain in the world. And this happened more than once with Frank. I can tell the story now that he's gone. I would have never mentioned his name if he was still alive. The variation of the story happened more than once. I called Frank up. I said, Frank, he lived about 25 minutes away. I said, Frank, I have something that came in that I think you would like. It just came in this morning, and I wanted to tell you, give you a first pick. He goes, what is it? And I would tell him, he goes, Bill, I have an abscess in my tooth. I'm going to the dentist to get it taken care of, but I might not be able to get there until this afternoon or tomorrow. I said, don't worry about it, Frank. 40 minutes later, he shows up. He had skipped his dentist appointment for his abscess in his tooth because it was more painful for him to miss the object than to actually get it. And the third group we get it are the people that really just maybe want to reward themselves with something nice every now and then. They're not really collectors, but they love the fact that they may own a Renoir or Napoleon's plans for invasion of and they want some nice things. But they're not necessarily that diehard collector that really wants to have everything. So those are our 3 groups of people, and thankfully, we're getting a lot more females. We've always had female clients, but a lot more female-owned businesses, and a lot more and a lot more single females that are great clients. That certainly much more than in my father's generation we would have had.
You've recently enlarged the gallery. You've taken over, as I understand it, adjacent buildings that were in somewhat of a disrepair. Was the intention to do that, to display more items? Did you have to go buy more inventory to fill the gallery up, or do you have stuff behind the walls or in the warehouse or something like that you were easily able to fill it up?
We were definitely easily able to fill it up. We added 19,000 square feet.
Wow.
And but we know what we always wanted to do is when you have something great, you want it to look great. And when it was displayed like my grandfather used to display, where it's touching things and something's right on top of it, it can't look its best. And what we're able to do in the new building is really give everything its own space where you can sit back and go, wow, that is amazing. And that's what we wanted to do. And we did have enough stock to be able to handle that.
Yeah. What has COVID done to, obviously foot traffic is down, but what has been the most noticeable impact of COVID on your business?
Well, the most noticeable is foot traffic. I mean, I'd say we're down 90% at the moment. That's the bad news. Our internet traffic is way up. Our social media following is way up. It's obviously a stressful time for so many people. There are people that don't really care, or that that aren't concerned about it. And then, of course, we have employees that are, extraordinarily neurotic about it. And, trying to keep everybody happy and run a business. It's always a balancing act.
Yeah. So I'm curious if prices are negotiable now. We're about to go to break. Is now the time to announce that MS Rao is negotiating?
What do you have in mind?
Always selling. I'm with Bill Rao. We're sitting in his gallery on Royal Street at MS Rao, one of the coolest places on planet Earth. We'll be back after this break. You're listening to What's Working, brought to you by Regions.
Life insurance is one of those subjects that make people want to change the subject rather than admit they probably don't have enough. I'm State Farm agent Allison Horner, and that's why I focus on how the benefits of life insurance actually live on by asking people to think in terms of life without having to sell the house insurance, or life without having to give up college insurance. Find out how the benefits of life insurance can live on for your family. Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, and get to a better state with State Farm.
That's the sound of rush hour. Hello, recess.
Mom!
Work from home is a lot of work. Even though we're a little further apart right now, we're still in this together. Regions is donating this ad to local food banks to shine a light on them as they feed our neighbors in need. Learn how you can help or get help at regions.com/foodbank. Regions Bank, member FDIC.
This is Cam Marston, host of What's Working. Jim Mitchell and his team at Signorama have provided all types of signage for nearly every event I've been a part of for years. I know his team's creativity, their multitude of products, and how easy they are to work with. His No Mistake Signorama is South Alabama's marketplace leader. Find Signorama on Facebook, call 634-0100, or visit next to Mullinex Ford on Airport Boulevard. We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is presented by Regions. I'm with Bill Rao of MS Rao Antiques in New Orleans on Royal Street. Bill, I want to talk about some of the items that have come through that have really caught your eye. But prior to that, if you could start your leadership of the gallery again, go back in time, what would you do differently, perhaps?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, unlike a lot of businesses, maybe not unlike a lot of family businesses, it wasn't like I became president one day and then said, we're going to change these things. I was able to get more and more authority as time came on. And all of a sudden one day when my uncle retired, my father, who was obviously, next line goes, okay, you be president, So what? And I don't think anything changed between one day and another. But putting that aside, I probably would work on my emotional intelligence a little bit better. Certainly, I've been trying my best to learn a lot from younger generations that the touchy-feely things are much more important. I get criticized a lot, rightfully so, that I don't say great job to people along the way, and I've been trying more, and if I would have learned that a little bit earlier, I've probably done a little bit better. And I know part of it's, my father never told me great job. And although I believe that he was pleased with how I was doing, well, I know because he would have yelled at me.
He had no problems expressing dissatisfaction.
And when he didn't express dissatisfaction, I just assumed he was satisfied.
Right.
And I'm sure part of that is inherited and learned. And so I would have, probably my emotional intelligence, I would have, I would have worked on more for working with my coworkers, not for. I'm very good with the clients and understanding.
Yeah, I was going to ask you whether the emotional intelligence payoff is with the staff, your team, or with the clients. It's
unequivocally the staff. The clients, we all one of our mantras is put yourself in the client's shoes and do what's best for the client.
Right.
That doesn't mean the client's always right. But if you're buying something from me, I'm going to do what's best for you. Yeah. I want to make sure that your experience here from A to Z is great.
Yeah. I'm hearing in my conversations since COVID, I'm tired of talking about COVID, but there's no way to avoid it, that the employers, the leaders, are having to show a bit of compassion that they're not used to showing, that they have to reach out a little bit in new ways to let everybody know I'm nervous too, but we'll get through this together type of thing. So your emotional intelligence comment is something that I'm hearing in subtly different ways through a lot of the interviews we're doing.
You have to show leadership now. This isn't our first rodeo. I mean, we went through Katrina, which was equally as bad, I would say. And without, maybe one of the reasons because we didn't have the technology we have today 15 years ago. And, and I learned a lot, and one of which is you have to sort of lead forward and tell everybody we're going to get through this.
Yeah. Folks, if you've never been to this gallery, I'm going to encourage you on your next trip to find it on Royal Street and come in and take a look around. In this gallery, there is like I said, a cave bear. I've seen 2 Enigma machines in here, I think. I've seen one, maybe 2. I saw Winston Churchill's cigar was here for a little while, one of his final cigars. I've seen all sorts of beautiful armoires and beautiful paintings and such. Bill, tell me some of the things that have come through these doors that have really made you catch your breath.
Well, people ask me often, what are the things that you wish you had kept?
Yeah.
And being the merchant that I was raised to be, and I say raised, I mean that sincerely, I love buying the objects, and I love when they find the right home. So I rarely have a hard time getting rid of something. Having said that, there's a few things that have always stuck in my mind. We had a painting. You mentioned Winston Churchill's cigar. We had a painting. Most people don't know this, but Winston Churchill was an artist. And he painted roughly 1/3 of his paintings before World War II and roughly 2/3 after. He painted one painting during World War II.
Oh my gosh, I can hear it coming.
Well, it's better than that. So we bought that painting, but the painting was better than just the one he bought during World War II. It was the exact painting of, to me. I'll explain it because it's so important. The Casablanca Conference comes, the very first wartime conference between Churchill and Stalin outside of the Americas, and they meet, and this is where they even though the Americans have won one battle in Europe, which is the North African battle, and not completely won yet, that they announce unconditional surrender of all parties. The conference goes on for 7 days. At the end of the 7 days, Roosevelt goes, "I'm going home." The American public doesn't even know I'm gone. And Churchill says, "I want you to come to Marrakesh with me for a day." To me, it's the most beautiful city in the world. Roosevelt objects. Churchill's very persuasive. They end up going. They both sort of later describe it as the best night of the war for both of them. They would go into this tower overlooking the city of Marrakesh. Roosevelt was actually carried up in this tower. They drink, they sing songs, and they have this wonderful time. The next morning, Roosevelt leaves. Churchill actually goes to the plane and wishes him goodbye and turns to his aide and says, "I hope nothing happens to that great man." He goes, "If he did, I couldn't live with myself." The plane flies off, and Churchill turns to his aide and says, "Bring me my paints." Goes back up into the tower where they were the night before and paints Marrakesh, and then sends it to President Roosevelt as a birthday present. So it's one painting done during the war, the only painting he did, painted by one of the most important people of the 20th century, given to another one of the most important people of the 20th century, at such an important part of the war. What I mean by that is, before this for Churchill, this was in January of 1943. Before December of 1943, every single bit of news for the English was bad, every bit. Starting in December, things started to turn the corner. And if you sort of think of the pendulum going all the way one way, it's just starting to swing back. And this was that moment where, for the first time in 3 years of him being prime minister, he felt optimism. And, you can see that in the painting. To me, it was just something that we bought, we sold, we did very well on it financially, and I wish I had kept it still.
Even with the good that you did financially, You wish you'd kept it still.
Yeah, because it's just, I mean, and part of it, I'm a World War II buff, and I'm a Winston Churchill fan, and to have that one-of-a-kind history. And today, something like that couldn't exist. And what I mean by that is today, if you gave something to a president and while he was sitting in office, it becomes the property of the State Department. But that changed in Eisenhower. But in Roosevelt's time, he could keep it and to send it to his family.
Can you tell me who bought it? Was it a Churchill fan, a Roosevelt? Was it a museum?
It was somebody very famous that bought it. I won't mention their name. Because they're still alive.
Yeah.
But it was somebody very famous, and this person has loaned it to a number of Churchill exhibitions along the way.
Yeah. Good for them. What a great story. And so is your passion painting? You told me your hobbies, World War II, Churchill. Is your passion painting, or could there be furniture that you have in here or anything like that?
Oh no, I love wonderful things, and I love when wonderful things in history come together. I love when beauty and history come together, and so it's not just paintings. Even though I literally wrote the book on 19th century European paintings.
Let me say that again. You literally.
I wrote the book on 19th century European paintings, but I love paintings, but I love objects every bit as much.
Yeah. How often are museums your customer?
Good bit. Although, quite straightforwardly, museums are not easy. What I mean by that is, they'll come by, will you hold this for us? And then, many, many months later, a deal gets done. And I guess I'm not patient enough often. So.
Yeah. So the museum, just inertia on big organizations, whereas you have a private customer, they're going to hand you a credit card or however people like this pay for stuff like this.
And we have numerous things in museums that are all over the world. And our best museum acquisitions are when the museum doesn't buy it, but when a benefactor of the museum buys it and gives it to the museum.
Yeah.
And then it's a win-win for everybody, because we don't go through that long process of our board's meeting in February and then after the board meets, then we need 90 days to get the money, and and you're sitting there twiddling your thumb for 6 months or 8 months.
There was a show on, I think it was National Geographic TV not long ago, about the mastery of forgers, how good they are. Tell me about the process of getting a painting or a piece of furniture that's, let's say, has a connection to Napoleon in it, and how you would discover whether that's true or not.
Well, we have a lot of expertise, and we have something like, we were figuring up 300 years of professional expertise. And I'm not talking about a salesperson or something, but people that are very knowledgeable and postgraduate degrees on our staff. And so we're able to look at a lot of things and just automatically know. Furniture is real easy, because furniture is almost impossible to fake great, because it ages it a certain way. But there's also a ton of expertise. There's a ton of expertise out there that we have availability to in today's world, where we can send pictures and say, give me your opinion, and finding that expert. We have a painting right now that somebody sent us to sell, and we have a question whether it's right. And the expert works for the LA County Museum, the world expert on this artist, and it's obviously not on the floor right now until we can figure out for sure if it's correct. And so we've reached out to other people to confirm on something like this, that we're not an expert on this particular work of art. But it's not as hard as it sounds.
Really? Because the way the story was is that the duplications are just remarkable. I'm glad to hear that it's not, that was a made-for-television show. It kept my eyeballs on it, but it's not as hard as it sounds.
There's certainly fakes out there, but it's not as difficult as it sounds to figure them out if you're careful.
So let's, as we wrap the show here, the interview, let's assume there's somebody listening that has never been here before, and they're going to come stand at the new beautiful front doors that are going to open for them, and they're going to step into a place and a gallery like they've never seen, where things are for sale. This is it's like a museum with stuff for sale. What do you want their mindset to be as they walk through?
What I want the mindset to be is, I want it all. Here's my checkbook. But
of course,
we want people to come in and be blown away, and we try to have things that hit all types of people. That it's very hard for somebody to come in here and not find something they like one way or another, because something, whether, even people that aren't interested in objects or paintings are going to find something historically that appeal to them or something. So we want somebody to have a great experience here that falls in love with something in our gallery. And whether they buy it or not, obviously we hope they buy it, but that's not really we don't expect that. And if it happens, it happens.
So it's almost an altruistic, maybe that's a strong word, but an altruistic approach of, we want you to be fascinated by what you see here.
We know if you're fascinated, if we fascinate enough people, we'll make the sales. Let me just put it like that, and it's a game of numbers. And we know if we fascinate enough people, you were fascinated enough to say, gee, I want to come back to New Orleans and do an interview here.
Absolutely. I love this place. My body chills whenever I come in because it's just so fascinating. That's the word again. Bill Rao is the president of MS Rao Antique Gallery on Royal Street, New Orleans. As I've said before, one of the coolest places I've ever been. Folks, if you get a chance, come take a look. Bill, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll have final comments after this break. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions.
Do you sometimes wonder about different money topics, but struggle to find the answers? The Every Dollar Counts podcast with Gulf Coast experts Josh Knoll and Jay Stubbs is made for those folks serious about their financial plan and looking for answers. Josh and Jay dedicate their time to explaining the various services and products available, as well as discussing lifestyle and money interests of the modern-day family. Tune in to Every Dollar Counts on Apple Podcasts and everywhere else you get your favorite podcasts.
Even if we don't meet in person, Regions is still here for you. We make it easier for you to stay informed and in control with online and mobile banking. You can check balances, transfer money, pay bills, deposit checks with Regions Mobile Deposit, and even set up helpful alerts no matter where you are. We're here to make it easier to bank your way. Learn more at regions.com/tools. Regions Bank, member FDIC.
Do you have a plan to protect your income if you can't work? We'd all like to believe that we'll never be disabled, but the reality is it could happen to you. And if it does, will your income be protected, your family be cared for? Richard Otts has served the Gulf Coast since 1997. If you'd like more information about disability insurance, contact Richard, 251-342-8917. That's 251-342-8917.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. Bill Rao gave us an extraordinary amount of time and attention in his conference room off the side of one of those beautiful galleries at MS Rao Galleries. And he is a good storyteller with good stories to tell. The online access, or the online action, I should say, that MS Rao was experiencing is certainly a result of COVID. As my producer, John Thompson, and I walked around the gallery after the interview was over, we had the place nearly to ourselves. And it wasn't because it was closed. It was because the streets of New Orleans and the foot traffic that usually befalls that place was absent due to COVID, due to COVID. But they have done a good job increasing online sales through clicks, through the internet. And I'm signed up for their mailing list, online mailing list, and it has increased. The frequency with which I get these things have increased, I've noticed. And it's always some sort of tease to get you to click a little bit further. And invariably, I'm deep into the website looking into there was one cane, a man's walking cane with a cigar punch hidden inside. And I got distracted on that and went down the wormhole that is that website and the endless clicks that I did. It's fascinating. And I've said this before, and I want you to think about this. When you're next in New Orleans, if you have a chance, take a look at that gallery and note the exceptional items in there and the access that you have to them. Now, a couple of the things that Bill said that are recurring themes in this show is, number one, succession planning issues. Family-run businesses have always been of great interest to mine. I've worked for a number of them in my seminar and my workshop business, and I find that they generally treat people better. I'm sure there are exceptions to this rule, but they generally treat people better. They give more deference to their employees. They look more long-term. They look down the road. Their employees are generally happier working for a family-run business. And I find that the case nearly every time. But that issue of succession is a monster. And we've done shows on this. In fact, I've received some calls due to the comments on this show from organizations about their own family-run business and their own succession planning issues. I have friends of mine that are involved in family-run business. And when I ask them about the upcoming turmoils that may come due to having family-run businesses, they just shake their heads almost in fear and apprehension of, I'm not exactly sure how we're going to rectify this. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen. One generation, then comes two generations as the next two children or three or more, which continues to grow and grow and grow. And now you have people married to a second cousin 4 generations down the line that want action from the family business, at least just some sort of paycheck. It becomes ugly. And I commend Bill for recognizing the challenge that was ahead of him. He watched it happen, as you heard from the interview, through poor decisions made by one of his competitors on Royal Street, another antique business that imploded due to poor succession planning. So this is a topic that regularly comes up. And if I had my druthers, if I could do this the way I would want, we would have a series of shows focusing on a month, let's say, on succession planning issues for family business. Simply don't have the wherewithal to organize that type of thing, find the guests, schedule the guests, all that kind of stuff. It would be wonderful to have these conversations and help my listeners out with the succession planning issues in family-run businesses. Congratulations to Bill for taking care of it in a proactive way, which is, I think, certainly one of the things that has led to the success in his business, is not having to worry or wonder how succession would happen. He's running the show. Everybody's happy. They support him. They support the growth of his business. So, MS Rao, a remarkable story there on Royal Street. $70 million a year in gross revenue. That's pretty good. $70 million, 60 people. Now, they're buying and selling some extraordinarily valuable things, which certainly helps that number. But I have to admit, when he said that, I was taken back. I expected to hear 15, 20 millions. And it just shows you how little I know about this type of thing. But I thoroughly enjoyed that episode. If you can drop by that gallery in New Orleans, I hope you'll do so. All right, let's wrap it up. That was one of the highlights of the What's Working series thus far, is being able to visit there. We're going to try to do more and more on-site visits and on-site interviews because I think it helps, and we get some interesting video footage. Click around for the video footage. You can see a little bit about what we did and what we saw and what that gallery is like. John Thompson is the show's producer, does a great job, takes out my ands, my ums, and my you-knows, makes it all work. I appreciate John. Kristen Ogden helps us organize these interviews, arrange the guests, etc. Folks, find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, put What's Working with Cam Marston. Our presence continues to rise in both of those venues. And you can hear this show again by going to whatsworkingcam.com. Again, whatsworkingcam.com, and where you can download the podcast and subscribe to them. If you do subscribe, rate us. It's important. We'll have another show next week. Have a good week, everybody.